public services time and then our discussion time.
You are live.
All right. We're back again for the next section of our Building Energy Code Working Group meeting today, July 24th. And next on the agenda is Public Service Department. We're going to hear from Kelly Launder and also Ben Civiletti, if he's still with us. Oh, there he is. Fabulous.
Ready?
All right, Kelly, you want to start?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I will start and we might do it a little out of order. I'll address A and C, and then I'll hand it over to Ben to address B, if that works. So,
Sure.
and I will be pretty brief. So, on the RBs and CBs compliance study, that's part of our market assessments that we do pretty much every 3 years. The contract for the residential market assessment is in the process of being executed. It has to go through internal review and then also other state review by the Attorney General's office and the Agency of Administration. So that process has begun. And then the timeline is dependent, out from obviously full execution, signed execution of the contract. So I'm going to try to give some timelines that could shift depending on how long it takes to fully execute the contract. So I think probably the most of interest to this group is there will be on-site inspections of a certain amount of homes. And then as part of those on-site inspections, they'll also be looking at whether they comply with code. So those inspections will take place, again, depending on when the contract's fully executed, between the end of September to mid-October. And then depending on when those inspections are completed, we expect a draft report by the end of this year, and then a final report by May of 2026. But I think the draft report, we typically do send that to the energy efficiency utilities for their review, and we could share, findings at that point with this group as well, but knowing obviously they're somewhat preliminary until they're finalized. So that's really what I had on that. Happy if I can answer questions, to answer them if people have them.
I think you answered my question. My question that I was formulating as you were going along there was what's in the contract, recognizing that the contract has to get, you have to finish with internal review and get it executed and all that. What was the timeline of the contract? And I think you just said so. So it sounds like the contract is probably within weeks or a month or maybe 6 weeks or something.
Right. One would hope.
Yeah.
I'm hoping it's longer than a month, but you never know.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone?
I have a question.
Oh, Sandy's got one.
This is exciting news. Can you tell me what the methodology will be this time? Will it be closer to 100 houses? And will you be finding them, for instance, by listers, information about new properties being taxed? Or is it going to all be people who volunteer their homes?
I'm not sure. Keith, have you been involved in the residential market assessments enough? I've been away from the actual project, or maybe even Richard might know because he's been involved. I'm not sure what methodology they're using for identification of the homes. It looks like you're shaking your head no. Richard, do you happen to know? I think you're part of.
Yeah, we're part of the team as sort of advisors, but in terms of the details, not sure of the numbers.
Okay. So, and I do not think, Sandy, the number is at 100, but I can get back to the group on the number. I did ask, I think we have some contingency money in there to make sure we're reaching a certain number to give a certain statistical confidence, right? So we want to reach that, but I don't think the total would be in the 100 range.
And it would be across the geography of Vermont, not heavily centered in Chittenden County? Or will you try to proportion it to by how many houses are constructed a year?
Let me get back with more specifics. I can, once this contract's executed, we could share the whole contract, but I certainly can get at least some details that would be of interest, like the numbers, the methodology, those kind of things, and how they identify them and geographic distribution. I can get back to the group on those details.
I could share that historically how that was done, but it was weighted by where homes are built. So it was representative of construction in Vermont historically. I assume it would be similar this time around.
Right. So it's certainly going to be more heavy in Chittenden, but not all in Chittenden. So
exactly.
Right. But there may be one in the Northeast Kingdom or something because there's less building happening there. So.
Actually, I have a question too. You mentioned this is a market assessment every 3 years. Is this different from the every 3-year thing, or is this is a compliance study?
Yeah, this isn't part of are you thinking of the budget and goal planning process, what we call the DRP, the demand resource plan process? Oh,
I thought you mentioned the market, at least what I wrote down was market assessment every 3 years. Is that what you said?
Yes.
So is this the same thing that you do every 3 years?
Yes. We include code compliance as part of the market assessment. It's both new construction and existing homes, and we do it every 3 years.
Okay. I guess I was under the impression that we didn't really have a statistic for RB's and CB's code compliance for, I think the last one was 10 years ago. But is that incorrect?
I don't think that's correct, but I know we did have a delay in the last one due to COVID. We had and also had way lower numbers on the on-sites, so we had problems getting the homes. So, but typically it's on a 3-year cycle. But I think the last one maybe dragged out longer than that.
And I think, Scott, there needs to be a lag time between when the code went into effect and the homes get built, and then the study is based on the code that was applicable at the time the homes were built. So there's always going to be a delay of a cycle or two.
Okay. Well, I guess I thought the last code compliance study was 2015, but anyway.
Right. Yeah, like Richard's saying that. So if we're looking at code compliance of 2015 code, the code compliance is going to happen till a couple years after that to have enough homes in the sample to see how many comply with the code, if that makes sense. So that was the year of the code went into effect that we were looking at the compliance with the 2015 code, but it wasn't done 10 years ago.
That makes sense. Look at compliance with 2020 code, with the RB's 2020, for instance.
Right.
Okay. I've been laboring under an illusion this whole time.
So can you make a copy of that code, that compliance survey poll available to us?
The results when they're finished, is that?
No, the most recent ones.
Oh yeah, it's on our website, and I'm happy to send the link.
Thank you.
When I get some of the answers to these other questions, I'm happy to send the link to those studies. Yep, they're on our website.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Drop them in the chat right now, the link to there.
Richard, you're on top of it.
Oh, unfortunately, yeah, the chat doesn't work for everybody. It only works with, it only goes to Megan, who's.
Yeah, I'll include it when I send a follow-up, just so everyone
Okay.
has it.
All right. Thank
Any
you.
other questions? Okay,
Seeing none,
so,
go ahead.
okay. So C was about allowing the use of energy efficiency utility funding for basically energy code compliance. Typically the programs have focused on getting builders to above code. So we have had a conversation with Efficiency Vermont about energy code compliance activities as part of, we just started the what I referred to earlier, the demand resource plan process, which sets the goals and the budgets for the next performance period, which will be 2027 to 2029. And after we had a great discussion, and after that discussion, Efficiency Vermont said they're going to go back and draft some ideas, and then we're hoping to get something from them sometime in August, and then have another meeting to discuss it further if needed. So that's where we are right now on that.
Okay. And the second item under C was asking about, or sort of talking about public, potentially areas of expenditure for sort of non-savings funding. And one was perhaps assisting with a public-facing web presence. In conversations with OPR in the past, they've noted that they don't really have funding for, first of all, they don't really have their web presence set up for filtering, sorting, the sort of other things that you might see when you're going to buy tires or something. But they would be willing to they might be willing to make the data available to a third party to build a more sort of user-friendly website. But of course, that would cost some money. So that was one thought that I had anyway about a good way to spend some money to increase code compliance, to really raise the profile of the builder registry and the voluntary certifications and the energy code requirements that do exist, that have existed for a long time. So that was one thought that I had, and another thought, or sort of along with that, was marketing and the sort of public service announcements that would raise the profile of the registry in general in the industry, broadly speaking, including real estate, mortgages, emergency management, any avenue that you could think of that would be useful to advise the public that we have a contractor registry that they should check before they enter a contract with a construction residential contractor, and that we also have these energy codes that are in fact required. So those were some thoughts about ways that we could perhaps use thermal money and EEU money to advance the industry a little bit. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Matt would want to take back that question to Efficiency Vermont and how they would, feel about potentially adding something or linking to something from their existing efficiency excellence network piece. But I think I said this to you when you brought it up, that I don't know what the department's position would be on that. I haven't discussed it internally. We are typically pushing to keep as little spending outside of, something that goes to directly to saving energy, right? So we're constantly kind of pushing on those non-resource acquisition costs. So I'll say that as a general principle, but I can't myself comment on that particular idea at this point.
I will note that I did send an email to Steve Spatz, who Matt's sitting in for today, and he responded with a long and detailed response about why, or sort of what their EVT's stance has been in the past, and I asked if we could sort of continue the conversation and see if there is perhaps a way to make these things work together. So
Yeah, I would.
As
Sorry.
you noted, asked Kelly too, there probably is some savings to be realized, but trying to quantify those savings, it may not be worth the trouble. So, and I'm talking about the savings. First of all, the savings for code compliance versus above code. I mean, obviously one of the issues with trying to quantify savings to code compliance is you have to characterize code compliance compared to normal building practices. What are normal building practices? That's requires a little bit of study and probably some argument.
Right, and that is one thing we are looking at in this market assessment is, that's what the market assessments are. What's going on in the market, both in existing homes with weatherization and new construction. So we will have a baseline of what is actually happening below code or above code, right? And then what's that delta? How much is it below code? Because when it says there's 57% compliance with code, is it 1% below code? Is it 10% below code? Right? So that's one of the things we're trying to quantify in this market assessment. So we have a better idea of like how much savings are you foregoing.
That will be really interesting.
Yeah. But back to the EUs, and I can imagine Steve Spatz's response. I think, a required registry, they typically, the EUs have typically obviously shied away from anything, that's mandatory and them being the enforcer, like or appearing as the enforcer. So I could understand some potential reluctantness.
Sure, yeah, and I in my response to Steve's response, I wanted to make abundantly clear that nobody was asking EVT to be the enforcer. It would certainly be a state office responsibility, not EVT's. Any other thoughts on this, or should we go on to Ben? A couple minutes behind still.
Scott, would you say that one more time?
I just wonder if there's any other questions.
No, whose responsibility?
Responsibility for code compliance, whether energy code or building code, it should rest with the state office, not with a contractor to the state. That was all. That was the only comment I made.
Okay. So you look at a compliance initiative out there.
Well, I mean, we're speaking in the abstract.
But that's what you said. Hold on. That's what you said, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
that's all.
What I said was it should rest with the state office, not with a contractor.
Okay.
That, as a general principle, that's not naming a state office, just saying. All right, Ben, go ahead.
All right. Well, hello everyone. Good to see you all. I think I've met a lot of you before, but for those of you who don't know, I'm Ben Civiletti, staff attorney with the department, and I think I'm here. I mean, maybe it's good to just clarify. The question is if there's any clarity on ability for municipalities to enforce specifically the building energy code.
Well, I think this goes back a couple of years. You commented in one of our meetings that there was some lack of clarity in statute about the authority for municipalities to enforce building codes or energy codes. either one.
Okay. I think I can. I'll provide as much information as I can here. And maybe if it's helpful, I'm not sure it will be, but we can try to share my screen. Let me see if I can do this. So, yes, does this work?
Is he, okay, there we go. Yeah. Yes, it's working.
Okay, great. So,
However, I can't see it. Can you make it bigger?
I can try. Is that helping?
That's okay to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, just a caveat here, which I think lawyers always have to make, which is municipal law is pretty complicated. So is code enforcement, and I don't practice in either of those areas. So I definitely would say that there may be even people here, on this call with more information or experience with this than me. But I'm happy to provide my thoughts based on what I can, make it as an assessment. And I'd encourage the committee to, consider talking to a municipal attorney if that's an option as well, if they want to dig further into this. But as far as what municipalities can do and cannot do, as a broad principle, Vermont is a Dillon's rule state. So what that means in practice is towns typically aren't thought to have powers beyond that which the legislature has specifically said that they have. And there's sort of like a little bit of ambiguity depending on the situation, but the starting point is if the legislature didn't provide the power to the town, the presumption is it doesn't have it. So with that in mind, looking at the various codes, it doesn't look like the legislature has specifically said that towns have the authority to sort of administer or enforce the building energy codes, the RBs and CBs, at the local level. There are examples where the legislature has given towns ability to enforce codes. One would be under 20 VSA 2736. If the Commissioner of Public Safety determines it's appropriate, towns can be assigned enforcement authority for the building and fire safety code that the DFS adopts. At least that's my understanding. I want to preface that with, I'm happy to be corrected on that. But that's one area where, sort of they can be assigned that role, and they have the enforcement powers with respect to the building and fire safety code. That power can also be taken back away, I think, by DFS. Then the other thing that's available is the ability to adopt bylaws and ordinances relating to construction, maintenance, repair, and alteration of buildings. That's under 24. This isn't really labeled very well, but I think that's under 24 VSA 3101. That, so under that provision, I think at least potentially a town could adopt its own building code. But then if you look here at subsection B, or C rather, anything they do adopt is supposed to be consistent with the current rules and standards adopted by DFS. So the impact of that requirement, I think, is a little bit up in the air as to what could or couldn't be in a code that a town could adopt. But there's potential room there for the towns to, have their own building code to a certain extent. And I think the question of whether they could adopt, for example, a local version of the RBs or CBs is an interesting question that, whether that would be consistent. I think that's a big gray area. But those are kind of the two big avenues that I would see. And maybe to sum up, there's no mechanism that I've seen in the statutes for RBs and CBs that would allow a town to enforce them, kind of just as they are. If there was authority under other areas of municipal law to adopt their own version of those codes, they would have to do that first. and then potentially enforce that local bylaw. And I don't know if I'm making any sense. I'm happy to answer
Well,
questions.
So can you scroll up? You're on your screen,
Yep.
please. I mean, it looks like, from what I'm understanding, that towns can enforce building codes if they have been authorized by, I think you have to scroll up some more, there we go. If they've been authorized by Division of Fire Safety, the Commissioner of Public Safety via the Division of Fire Safety, if they've been authorized to do so.
I think that's right. So my understanding, and again, I'm happy to be corrected on this, but I think there is, right, the Building and Fire Safety Code. And that is something that if the towns are assigned responsibility for it, they have the authority to enforce it.
Okay. And we so happens we have the Division of Fire Safety sitting right
Right.
here. Is that the case?
I agree.
Okay.
And we do have 11 communities out. We have inspection agreements with, and they are very in its complexity.
All right. But since the Division of Fire Safety does not administer the energy codes, RBs or CBs, that's a gap, it looks like. There is no authority for towns to enforce RBs or CBs. Is that correct also?
I think there's nothing. Yeah, I mean, the answer is a little more complicated, but there's nothing in the statutes that would give towns that authority in a clear, without kind of doing further interpretation, and then you get into areas where it's an untested question. There's no clear authority, right? And under Dylan's rule, the first thing you look to is has the legislature said yes they can, and I haven't found that.
Well, Ben, I have a question actually. There is a
Okay.
provision that allows municipalities to adopt the stretch code for
Yes.
residential. So if
Right.
they adopt that, then would they, when they adopt that, does that give them authority to enforce it, or would they be asking for that authority when they adopt it?
The adoption, yes, there's a provision of the Residential Building Energy Code statute that says towns can adopt the stretch code. What it means to have an adopted stretch code is very unclear to me. I think what that statute is meant to suggest is unclear. I think, it's a possibility that if the town adopted that as some kind of ordinance, and in addition, was to adopt some kind of mechanism to administer it, there's a possibility that it's a possibility that authority exists, although it would be through a combination of sort of statutes, and there's not a clear answer.
Well, if they put it by ordinance, then the ordinance would need to be approved by the General Assembly.
You may be right. I'm not sure about that. I think, yeah.
Or maybe that's the charter.
So that let me just think really quick on that one. So the interesting thing about that piece is, yeah, I guess just to say, all I can say about that piece is the statute doesn't say that towns can enforce that section or that stretch code. And I would be curious, if the legislature is trying to let towns adopt and enforce the stretch code, why would they not let them adopt and enforce the lower version, the base version?
Well, again, the question isn't really about preventing towns from doing this. The question is really, is there a technical amendment that needs to be made in order to facilitate this? So I guess, I don't know if we really want to spend too much more time on this, but Sandy does have a question.
Yeah, I was going to point out that AIA Vermont's policy committee became aware of this issue 3 years ago, and in 2022. And it was the Regional Planning Commission, I think in Chittenden County, that was working on this question. And there was a legal analysis done back then. And it pretty much fits Ben's analysis. that there is no authority, and part of the issue is the public service departments own at the statewide level says that there's no authority to enforce. So there's nothing that can pass down. And this was actually the original reason why AIA Vermont wanted the authority to go over to fire safety, because there's an existing pass down ordinance and, excuse me, not ordinance, statute. And it works quite well. The major thing that AIA, it basically wouldn't even need a statute change if the authority for the energy codes
Right.
went over to them.
Right.
So the one thing that we have been asking for is a way to fund fire safety for their supervisory role. In construction, it's very important that codes are equal throughout the state. In other words, that towns are not making road ordinances, but also that they're enforced similarly throughout the state. And if towns do begin to have that role by agreement with fire safety, the fire safety's over higher level management is going to increase. And there seems to be a need for some kind of funding to move up from the permit fees being collected locally up to the state level. And I know we've mentioned this to fire safety, and I think the answer is there's no interest from the municipalities for passing up any of their fees, even if they have a surplus at the end of the year, which some do, significant surpluses. But that if fire safety is being asked to extend its memorandums of agreements to more towns, there needs to be a mechanism that they are not, more work's not being created, it's not funded.
Sure. Would be interesting to get that copy of that analysis from AIA from 3 years
Yeah,
ago.
I'm sure I have a copy of
Okay,
it,
that
and I
would-
know Donna,
If
who was.
you would send that along, that would be great. And also, Ben, if you wouldn't mind sending what you had prepared,
It was the RPC.
Sure.
that would be great too. It would be great to try to sort this out in the course of trying to fix this whole process. Anybody have any other comments? Any other questions? All right, well, we're running a little bit behind here, as per normal. The last item on the agenda is, sort of a goals and strategies discussion. And where we're going with this committee, really, or working group. And I think that I have tried to make clear that my vision of where we'd like to go. Well, first of all, the working group and its report can be whatever the consensus is that the report should be. And I hope that what we will do is build on the last 2 years' reports. And I think that the consensus of the group, not the unanimous consensus, but the consensus of the group the last 2 years was, as Sandy says, that authority over energy codes really ought to rest with the same office that has authority over all other building codes, because energy codes really are a subset of building codes. But there's a world of complication making that happen. And that may or may not be something that can be done in 1 year or in the bill that I hope to draft based on the findings of this year's work. But it still can be in the working group's report. So I guess my focus, being a legislator, is on what needs to be in legislation, what can we do that would advance the effort towards energy code compliance on a voluntary basis. And that doesn't require raising money, raising revenues, imposing more fees, or increasing mandates, since I don't think there is an appetite for that generally in the legislature or in the administration. So that's my narrow focus legislatively. But again, does not have to be the focus of the working group's report. So I guess I just wanted to make that part clear. And in terms of voluntary compliance, it seems to me what I've been focusing on really is improving the registry in terms of its visibility and its accessibility to the public and also to contractors, so that it is something that consumers will consult with before they enter a contract for spending more than $10,000 on their property, which is a significant amount of money for most people. And that they will understand what the registry is providing. It's not providing a certification of competence. It's providing just a registration. But there are voluntary certifications that are associated with it. And if the profile of the registry is raised in the course of the next few years, and the voluntary certification, sort of the availability of a variety of voluntary certifications, perhaps a ladder of voluntary certifications towards higher and higher levels of building knowledge and building science understanding, that will be a sort of a self-reinforcing incentive for contractors to obtain the training and education necessary to build better buildings and manage moisture in buildings, which is really the entire problem that we're facing as we build tighter and better insulated buildings, managing the moisture. So that's been my focus and my effort, and I wonder if anybody has any further thoughts to add. I see Mr. Peltier has turned his camera on, like maybe he's gonna say something. No,
No, the only thing that came to mind though is it would be good to clear up the authority issue, I think, in the legislature,
yeah,
one way or the other.
well, I think so.
Yeah.
I think that probably it's not a matter of necessarily changing, but it might be a matter of changing the pathway of for the authority from the General Assembly to municipalities. But in any case, it's a matter of just clearing up any confusion about it. Sandy's got another comment.
Yeah, I guess I would hope that the report's not written with this wording per se. Because we've been trying to avoid the term enforcement mechanisms or enforcement in general.
Yeah,
The question is administration. We need to create administration for RVs at the project construction level. And there was no mistake that your very last, your C-double-I there was the first recommendation in 2023. And even if it's on a slow track, I hope that in the report it remains as the number one item. BVRA talks a lot about a unified authority over all building construction.
right.
And that is really what we are driving for. Construction to remain cost effective has to be simple, it has to be consistent across the state. And it shouldn't be complicated or weird.
Right.
And I don't know how you can force people to do something that they can't even do. You know, this is actually can't, including certification right now.
Right. Well, I think coming up with a list of recommendations is something that we are going to be needing to do. Maybe not in the next meeting, but in the meeting after, come up with some recommendations that we can then debate and develop a sense of priorities about. Peter has his hand up. There you go.
Hi, thank you, Representative Campbell. So, our thoughts always go towards, contractor education. If that results in a certification, that's great. But I do think that there's a lot of room for, education on different types of, building energy, building, requirements, for contractors. We're certainly willing and able as realtors who are licensed and do require continuing education credits to have credits or education courses for realtors, so we're better informed on the issue at hand. And just one other thing, if we Montpelier has an energy home energy disclosure requirement at the time property's offered for sale. And I would ask if there's time with this committee that I could bring in a couple of realtors who are practicing in Montpelier and have experience with the home energy profile to kind of relate to everybody what their experience has been.
Well, that would be great. Maybe we could do that next meeting. Let's be in touch after this meeting, Peter.
Okay. Yep. That's great. Thank you.
I'm just making a note here. Is everybody exhausted? Nobody's got their hands up. Any other questions? This is what happens this time of day. Do we have any members of the public here? I don't think we do. It's just the hardcore nerds left. All right. Public comment.
Sorry, are you running through the rest on that list? I was waiting for you to, did you go through B?
Sure, go ahead, Kelly.
No, I just didn't know if there was more on what that item was getting at. Role of advisory committee, timing of updates.
Well, so this we've talked about this somewhat before. The rollout of the updates for the 2024. Actually, there is something more to talk about here. The rollout of the updates for the 2024 RBs and CBs was delayed because of how it worked through the rulemaking process, with the thought that there might be recommendations coming out of last year's working group that would affect the rollout. And then when it was rolled out, there was a delay in getting the materials necessary for contractors and architects to comply. So actually, Sandy has suggested some additions to statute that would clarify the timing for future updates so that there is assured to be time for the tools to be developed that architects and contractors need in order to comply with updated energy codes. So that's where that came from. It's good that you mentioned that.
It's not my personal wishes and dreams. It's actually BBRA.
BBRA, yes.
And AIA, as of this afternoon, was almost all the way to the green officially.
Okay. I guess I could.
One comment or question I have on that, I did look at that, and I think one of them was that materials would be developed, I think, like a year prior to the code going into effect. And then there was also something about once the code went into effect, you wouldn't have to meet it for another year or something like that, which I thought was really confusing. Like, just say it has to be 2 years. Like, that doesn't really make any sense to,
Let Let me see if I can put it on screen, Kelly, so we can talk about it. Megan, can I have?
Kurt,
Yeah.
you want permission?
Yes, please.
There you go.
And then I think it might have been part of the wording might have been part of your bill, Scott, that I had mentioned was a bit confusing about having the handbook and the code materials developed and approved as part of the code, like the rule process, which is just not doable. Like we have to have the code finalized as part of the rule, the changes finalized before we can develop the code materials and the code books. We can't start that process. Like ICC won't work with us, PNNL won't work with us on ResCheck until we have a finalized code.
All right, let me see if I can get this up here. No. All right, hang on a second.
Scott, can I respond while you're looking
Yes.
for that? Okay, so AIA Vermont and BVRA are responding to a pretty serious situation that has gotten worse over the last year. Typically speaking, a house is designed at least a year before construction starts. And it gets cost estimated and an agreement is made, some kind of deposit is paid. So the process is longer, I think, than people realize. And once the costs are agreed on, it is very difficult to change the provisions for the energy code. And right now with certification, the contractor is put in the place of having to comply with something that they haven't cost estimated. And there have been legal cases already where the contractor has to go back and at their own expense, modify the building after the fact. This is a really serious situation. And the advisory committee, people I know who've been served on the advisory committee, had cautions about things like wall sections. And for the wall sections in the handbook to continue being revised 6 months after the code became effective and people are using incorrect versions of the handbook online is not acceptable for the construction industry. And moreover, we can't even, the BVRA members, I'm speaking now for BVRA, not a member of AIA Vermont, they cannot even figure out where the drawings were that they used when they tried to price out the building. So it's a very expensive and very frustrating, stressful situation. So what we are asking for, and again, I'm speaking as a member of BVRA for the moment because Jim cannot talk, I just asked him, is to update the handbook at least to the level of construction of sections and drawings that are being shared. At the same time as the code is being updated so that people can have input and there's no questions afterwards. And if ResCheck is involved, a custom version of ResCheck is involved, it absolutely needs to be available at the time those houses are being designed. That where they're going to be legally have to be compliant with a new code. It would help the construction industry to not be so customized. Because for instance, the 2021 code, it started to be available.
The state house is closing in 15 minutes. Please gather your belongings and exit the building. Thank you for visiting. The state house is closing in 15 minutes. Please gather your belongings and exit the building. Thank you for visiting.
So all the other states they just upgraded to 2021. That 2021 code has been available for several years, and it's not involving custom things like wall sections.
Right,
So
okay.
they can update, but we can't do that in Vermont because we're so highly customized.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think you
Yeah.
made the case.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I just wanted to draw people's attention to this draft language, which is, it's draft language. It's not been, sort of approved by AIA Vermont as their request. And so I'm putting this up for Kelly to have a look at. I see Matt Sharp has got his hand up.
Yeah,
Also.
that I wasn't talking about the justification. I understand the concerns. I'm just saying this language is not workable. That you have to say your effective date in the rule when it's getting adopted. You can't say 12, it'll be adopted in 12 months, which is a specific date, plus 6 months after that, after the materials are done. You have to specify a date. So if we want the date to be a year and a half after the adoption date, that's fine, but it can't, this language doesn't work, is more what I'm saying. And also,
Okay.
I don't think it works to develop a handbook as things are changing. We want a fully adopted rule that's approved, and then you take what's been approved and you adopt and you do the materials, not developing them along with them and then changing it as you go along when things change due to people's comments or what concerns. That is not workable as a process.
Matt, do you have a comment?
Yeah, my comment, because I agree with both the concern raised and the counter concern about how the date range in this might be difficult to manage. Would it be possible and solve the issue to talk about the permit date being the code in adoption of the date of the permit? And that way, you know what you're getting into. And you don't get.
Sorry to cut you off, Matt. There is different language in CBs that has an effective date, but allows like I think I'd have to double check. Keith might know offhand. I think it's a 6-month wiggle room of like you have a certain amount of time after your permit gets put in to go by either the old code that was in effect when you submitted the permit or the new code, something like that. So that would be fine. But
yeah, something like that I think would be
Mhm.
helpful, because I think the breaking ground rule of when, which code's relevant is what's more problematic for how planning goes with architects and designers.
Sure.
I would agree with that too. I was thinking the same thing before Matt just said it, if that one's possible. I know we utilize it on the commercial where it can be used. I believe now our developers use that.
Am I missing that in this section of the statute? This is 30 VSA section 53, or is it somewhere else?
Yeah, I think it's
I don't know, just scanning
so
it. I'm
it
not
says
seeing.
person submitting an application for any local permit authorizing commercial construction or an application before the effective date of the amended CB shall have the option of complying with the applicable provisions of the earlier or the amended CBs. After the effective date of the original or amended CBs, any person submitting an application so shall comply with the most recent version. So that's, yes, that's the language.
And there's not analogous language in the Arby's section?
No, there's not. It just says upon construction, you have to meet the new code.
So suppose we added this to the Arby's section, something like this.
Sure.
Is that,
I think one of the
And you make it a year too. Probably, right, Sandy?
Yeah.
That's consistent with Sandy, probably.
Target date of transition, so that that public service is completely sure that they can deliver the goods before people are trying to design buildings.
Is there I don't see after the effective date.
Like make the effective date 2 years after the approval date or something like that. Again, it's a problem of customization of Vermont's energy codes. Because the res check just doesn't exist for us. And we can't, if you
Well,
look at the website, it says, if you go through this patch, your building may comply and a contractor cannot
Yeah.
certify to may comply.
Right, well, and the res check may be another issue too, since it's a federal
Yeah,
DOE
Well,
product.
but one can always go back to Elcar and ask for an extension.
Yeah, all right, Chris,
I agree, it's a critical issue. I'm just wondering if we have, does the wordsmithing all happen now?
oh, no, we're not wordsmithing.
AIA Vermont could be
Yeah.
That's what
public
I'm- that's what I'm-
service.
Yeah.
That would be,
Yeah.
I think, appropriate. I think they would embrace that.
Okay. Why don't we do
Not
that?
trying to cut it short at all.
No.
Well.
They told us we have to leave before we get locked in the building. I love you guys very much.
You guys are staying over the State House slumber party.
You'd be locked in.
All right. So that's a good place to end on then. Anybody else have any other questions?
Just, I want to let you guys go, but I just want to put out there, I think it'd be great for us to hear from a HERS rater or or two and their experience with supporting code compliance as in one of the future meetings.
Yeah.
So just want to plant that seed because we continue to think that they could play an important role in increasing our compliance rates.
That's great.
We'd be happy to help with arranging that, Scott. So let Zach and me know if that seems like that would be useful.
Just about to ask you for that very question. So I will be in touch with you.
Also, Scott, along the lines of municipal authority, we have had a lot of questions from a variety of municipalities about whether, speaking of HERS raters, whether they could require a HERS rating on new construction. So just throwing that out there.
Let's include that as part of discussion. Good point.
So some municipalities ask whether they can require HERS ratings.
Yeah.
You don't have the authority.
They don't seem to have the authority right now, according to your council.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying, like, if you're gonna think about what authority might be given to municipalities, that's a question we've had a lot.
Okay.
There would need to be a cost effective.
Great. Some thoughts for the next meeting. If anybody else has any other thoughts, that would be great to hear anytime. Anybody else have anything else to say today? I think we are wrapping up a few minutes ahead of time. Look at that.
Hurry, get out of the State House, run. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you,
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate your time.
Bye.